John, we've got another absolutely gorgeous, almost cloudless spring morning. What time were you here for meditation this morning?
5 o'clock.
And was it still dark?
Mm-hmm.
What did you do?
Bent over backwards and looked at the stars. Well, I was actually here outside the church at 10 minutes to 5, so I had my 5 minutes under the stars.
And what do you like to call the stars?
Home. Little brothers and sisters. Yeah.
How far back does this sort of sibling comfort go? When did you first sort of cuddle up to the stars?
Well, I've often told you that I wanted to be a farmer even before I was born. And of course the first star that I first of course I didn't use the big word constellation, but the first thing I found up in the sky was the plough. So I knew the plough from a very early age. I can never remember the other ones, but I knew the plough backwards. And I still love the way it's nobody would recognise it today as a modern plough. It was an old-fashioned sort of plough, the sort that was designed to be pulled along by an animal.
Have you ever used a plough of that old shape, that old form, with either a horse or an ox?
Not in England, but I did as a boy on several occasions walk beside the man who was ploughing, which of course went into me and never forgotten the sights and sounds and smells of that experience. A marvellous thing to do, to follow the plough like that. And actually once I was in Africa, and there was some men, or family I think, who were ploughing with oxen. And I went over and talked to them. I've always drawn to oxen in that way. I had to go on the plough. It was bouncing around among a lot of sort of stumps and things in the soil, but they're not very impressive animals, thin little creatures.
What is it about stars, John, that draws you up?
Well, let's say instinct. Just natural. What draws one to the horizon? What draws people to the sea? What do people do when they go to the seaside? Sit and look.
Have you ever had a telescope out of interest?
Yes, I never cared for it. Yes, when we were children, Dad came home one day with a big old-fashioned telescope, which he rigged up for us. And I remember looking at the moon a few times and the stars, but I think I always preferred the sky without a telescope. I don't like that sort of intrusion of a man-made object between me and the stars. I'm not interested in the interpretations of man. I just love the stars and their purity, pure simplicity.
In your own lifetime, our perception of the stars has changed dramatically.
Yes, I know. Well, mine hasn't. I don't care for all this modern, fresh understanding of space. It goes in one ear and out of the other. I'm not interested in that. I just love them. I'd rather think of them as my kindred up there, my natural home. I don't want to know the same way that I'm not particularly interested in the names and identities of wild plants or animals. I just love them as they are.
surprise, surprise, there are not just millions, but billions of galaxies, apparently. So the expanse of space is awesome. Even more awesome than our array of stars from the visible eye. And do you know what? It doesn't make me feel lost in space or in this cosmos. It makes, like you love the stars as your brothers and sisters, it makes me feel more and more at home in this magnificent cosmos that we still don't know the extent of it or the infinity of it. What do we mean by infinity? And I'm just curious, genuinely curious. It appears that you don't want to peek behind the curtain, so to speak, of the stars that you see when you look up.
I wouldn't put it like that, Phil. As I had breakfast this morning, I listened to the radio, and there was a chap talking about the crisis among young people not knowing what to do. They finish school, they come out into the world tells them they should get a job. What job? What interests them? What inspires them? What motivates them to do anything in particular in life? And this touched me very deeply, because I was one of those blessed young men who knew from the very beginning that I wanted to be a farmer. I loved the land. I think a lot now I'm old about this word purity. It's only comparatively recently that I've understood what purity is in the spiritual sense. Well, perhaps we never know what purity is, but we know what impurity is. Impurity is me. Is the I, me, mine, is the ego. It's that which separates us from God. Separates you and me, us and the whole world. And man and our present civilization is almost entirely ego-dominated. It's a world of man, centered upon man. So this is what confronts a young person finishing school or university at what shall I do? And the world is offering countless variations of man, of human ingenuity, human technology, the latest exploration of the stars, ad infinitum. And there's a sort of gut reaction to this among a lot of young people. I don't want it. It's not what I want. And it certainly doesn't inspire me. What does? The stars, the simple beauty of a little bird, the flowers, the grass, and the land, my beloved land. Not the latest technology of farming. It's not even called farming now. I was blessed to grow up in a world where technology hadn't been invented. Even machines were hardly beginning. That plough would be a plough made of wood, wooden plough. I also was troubled with this question, what should I do? At first, as a young man, I wanted to make the deserts green. I was already, as a child, I was against modern farming, what was then called artificial fertilizers and mechanization. And so I was one of the first organic farmers, as you may know. And this was my mission really as a young man. All this, what's now called conservation and ecology. But when that stage of my life passed, in my middle years, through my 50s, I was really quite lost. I didn't know what to do until I was living in Russia at that time. And one night I received a sort of instruction to pray, to go and pray in a certain church. And all our listeners will know that through the years of communism, that was nearly 80, best part of a century through what was called communism then, the church was politically destroyed. It wasn't allowed. You were imprisoned. You were either sent to exile or even killed for talking about God or practicing any religion. Churches were destroyed. They didn't exist. Converted into utilitarian buildings or something. So young people grew up in a godless society. In that sense, rather like our present Western civilization is, where godlessness is much more normal than godliness. And what happened to me, I was in my early 60s, I think I was just about 60 in Russia then, after quite a number of years of feeling lost between the passing of my farming years and not knowing what to do. And I was told to go and pray in what was then just a warehouse, a disused warehouse that had been allocated for use to be converted to a church. So I went and just went there, stood in a corner and prayed. And immediately I knew what I wanted to do more than anything else. It gave my life new purpose. And that's what I do and what I do now. That's immediately what I called my work. And I've been practicing that ever since. That's why I come to church twice a day here and pray. It started in Russia. And in the face of the world, I absolutely have no doubt that there's nothing I can do of more use. And what in essence is prayer? It's that same instinct as took me as a little boy to the stars. It's the great unknown. It's the surrendering to something bigger than me, beyond my human cleverness, beyond my human intellect, beyond anything.
It's also got an echo of one of your more famous sayings, "Don't fence me in."
Exactly. The world's too small. You know, we are born, body, mind, and come on, you know the answer to this, spirit. Whether you think you've got a spirit or not, if you're out of some clever technological university that doesn't acknowledge spirit, it doesn't matter. I can tell you that sooner or later in this life you will realize there's this thing called spirit, and nobody knows what spirit is. This is the wonder and the glory of it. It's like the stars. It's the great beyond. It's the don't fence me in. It's the freedom from all the not it of this world. It's the love that never says no. It's the life that doesn't die. It's the great promise of eternal life beyond. Now it calls to adventurous spirits like mine. Some people are more timid. They like to stay within the world of man and, want it all buttoned up like this local supermarket. Well, that's always been the case, but what a calling to those people that won't fit in this non-life of life and want something more, who reach for the stars, figuratively, emotionally, with their hearts. This is the great calling. This is the work. And when society misses this inspiration, this inflow of the spirit into existence, life becomes flat and dull and loses its meaning. So That's the situation. And the meaning isn't found by putting more money into the health service or curing this or that latest disease.
Steady on, John. We'll get banned by YouTube. They're listening, you know. There are cosmonauts. Well, there are astronauts, cosmonauts, psychonauts, and you're a sort of pioneer spiritonaut, ploughing your way in amongst the stars. We've had, you've sat here, and in this chair was Rupert Sheldrake, if you remember, and it was on, we're in All Saints Church, Bakewell, and it was on All Saints Day. And you recorded a very lovely interview with Rupert. It was called For All the Saints. And Rupert has, as you know, a very popular YouTube channel. And he's actually attracted a lot of interest, shall we say, others would say opprobrium, when he seriously suggested that the sun, which is a star, may be conscious. I don't think he actually is adamant and says it is conscious. He gives 3 or 4 reasons why the sun may possess some form of consciousness. And if our sun, what about the millions and billions of other suns? What do you think to Rupert's theory? Are the stars conscious?
Dear. What a question. What a question. Do you know, this word conscious, I don't think was invented until quite recently. I'd never heard of it. I remember when some of my friends started talking about consciousness, I had no idea what they were talking about. And now if it's on everybody's lips, honestly, ask a silly question, you get a silly answer, don't you? Do you think our ancestors, do you think any animal that looks at the stars, do you think, is it conscious? The question is such a damn silly question. Isn't it obvious? And doesn't this just show the intellectual constipation of all this analytical, conceptual thinking, as if man, little trumped up nothing of a man, dare ask such a question? Oh man, two things have no limit: the foolishness of man and the mercy of God. Gosh, what a question.
You're welcome.
Aren't the daisies conscious? Isn't the grass conscious? Is anything not conscious? The very stones, aren't they conscious? The dust beneath your feet. Isn't light conscious? Isn't beauty conscious? What is not conscious? There's a better question. What is not conscious? I tell you what is. It's the ignorance of me. It's this impurity called me. This arrogance of me that has the effrontery even to formulate such a question. Who the hell does man think he is?
In the Bible, a little lower than the angels.
Quite a bit lower. Well, if you think of the daisies and the stones as angels, why not? Man. And what will happen to me very soon? Ding dong, the church bell will go. I'll be taken into a big furnace, burnt to dust, and the dust will be blown on the winds.
We were having coffee. You made a nice coffee in your kitchen the other day. And we were talking about the stars then. But we also recalled that when we look up into the night sky, sometimes there are blinking lights, which is probably a plane. And then there are moving lights that don't blink, which could be a satellite. Or we thought, perhaps if we're lucky, the International Space Station. Do you remember? And I was wondering, I wanted to ask you, John, I know you want to raise the level of our conversations to higher things. So I want you to imagine you are on the International Space Station. Like in the novel Orbital, which won the Booker Prize this last year, about just one day on the International Space Station, and how would it elevate the human view of not only the planet below, pale blue dot below, and of course being in space. So this is an opportunity, I'll edit this by the way, where I'm going with this is to give you a platform to share some of your insights as your thoughts rise to higher things.
Well, it's really just childishness. It really is. It's so infantile. It's ignorance of anything better. Look, since the beginning of time, men have meditated. Men have sat beneath the stars. They've said a little mantra or something. They've transcended. Transcended matter. Transcended the mind, the human inventiveness, human clever. You just transcend and you go God knows where. Look, here are these little children's baubles of space, bubbles, just like they are, just like children, bubbles playing around down in the down below. You wouldn't notice them even. They just don't come into your mind. They're just impurity. Impurity in the atmosphere, impurity in the human, whatever a human is. It's meditation or prayer, the same things. These so far transcend what we call the human world, which is really the mortal world, which is the egoistic world. But these are no longer questions even. The question only exists in what you call duality, which is this or that. In the real world, there is no duality. It's all one. So this whole world of man doing or man thinking or man having ideas about or man asking questions, all this belongs to duality, that which is separated from the one great reality which we call God. And in this world, man is incomplete. This is why he wants to explore space, because he's incomplete, because he doesn't know. In the real world, man is complete. He needs nothing. He is complete. We can't conceive of such a thing with our conceptual, dualistic, separated mind. It's beyond conception. People nod their heads, will agree or disagree, say but, well, all this is down here. You need to experience it in reality. So come back to this little child, just gazing at the stars, in wonder, before words even enter his little mind. still less space stations and all this. Wonder, lost in, there's a lovely hymn, lost in wonder, love and praise. The glory of God. This is what man in his fullness is, undivided, man in his perfection, as it was in the beginning, is now and ever shall be.
When we came into church earlier, I said, I thought you were looking more boyish. I thought you were regressing into childhood, and I think you agreed with me.
Well, thank God I am, because, you see, I mentioned purity earlier on, and I lost a rather thread of my thought, or you lost it, or anyway, between us we lost it. But let me come back now to purity, because, you see, this higher consciousness is pure. Now, quite a lot of people who struggle with love down in this dualistic world, I love you, which doesn't always work out according to plan, they begin to talk about pure love, search for pure love. What is pure love? What is pure freedom? What is pure anything? I remember an old example given to me. When you put a glass of muddy water, just let it stand still, the impurity settles to the bottom, doesn't it? So you have pure water and the impurity down below. Exactly the same thing happens in spiritual work or in life experience. That if you come to this presence, what I call this stillness, this presence, here now, you can feel all these questions, they sort of settle down, don't they? And this sense of presence comes forward. If we stay with this presence, the questions, the talking gets less, and one is drawn into this. It just happens naturally. So we say God calls us. So we are called back to purity. And the impurity of John Butler, you wait, if you're with me, when I die, I'll soon start smelling bad. And this smell, you'll see I remember an old boyish poem, first you get ill, and then you get worse, and then they cart you off in a hearse. Worms crawl in and worms crawl out. It describes the decay of the body. This is impurity, my dears. This is the fate of man in his mind and intellect. It rots away. This purity is untouched by corruption. That's why it's pure. And the destiny of man is to save his soul, which means free from corruption. That's the old-fashioned principle of faith and religion, the salvation of the soul. That's the purpose of life. There you are, all young men wondering what to do. There's your mission in life, dear. Save your soul, and when you save your own soul, you'll start being of use to others.
Does that mean we're going to fill up the monasteries again, John?
Well, the trouble is, once it gets organized by man, corruption creeps in. Beware of human organizations. But it might be a step in the right direction.
Hope you don't mind me saying, there is a sort of end game tone to your conversation this morning, John. What's going on?
Well, I'm dying out, dear. I'm being recalled to my heavenly destiny. And all this is clear to me now as it's never been before. It's becoming crystal clear. The vanity of what we call life and the hope of salvation. The reality of the unreality of what we call life and the real reality of spirit.
Are you going back to certain passages or books of the Bible these days out of interest? I've not asked you that before.
Well, I'm always in and out of the Bible because I was lucky, I was brought up that way. I'm familiar with it, and that's another. If I've got to dive quite deeply back into the world again to start talking like this, haven't I? It's interesting. We're pulled out, and then we can get drawn back into the concerns of the world. And of course, one of the concerns of the world is education, and how the Bible was the cornerstone of education years ago, and now I hardly know anybody who actually has read the Bible or knows anything about it. Quite extraordinary. No wonder man is as he is. Yes, all those good old... The Bible is many, many things. It's a collection of all sorts of things. But it's not half called the good book for a good reason.
I'm wondering if you have a favourite book in the Bible.
I wouldn't say so.
Perhaps Ecclesiastes, all is vanity.
Yes, I loved that as a young man. That was one of the first bits I knew that. I remember as a young man when I was... my father had a business then and of course wanted me to join it, and I was struggling with my father. I wanted to go off and make the world a better place. And I didn't see how I could do that in the business anyway. And I was in Edinburgh at the time, and I was with a friend, and we were of course thinking very much about life and what we should do, what it was to be a real man. And we went up to a little church in Edinburgh Castle, at the top of a small mountain really in the middle of Edinburgh. And the Bible there was open at Ecclesiastes. Rejoice, young man, in thy youth. But when the evil days come not and the years draw nigh, when thou shalt say, I have no pleasure in them. And we took that as a message, at least I took, to go to South America, to leave my father, and go to South America to make the world a better place. And so I went.
In meditation, you very often say you are taken. Do you, in your imagination, rise up into the air, the stars? You talk also about being in an airplane and rising above the clouds of thought. Does your imagination sort of kick in, play a part in that?
No, the imagination is way down here. The imagination, you don't get anywhere with the imagination. No, this is way beyond all that. Yeah, far beyond it. That's just the play of the mind. It's just duality. Yeah.
Now, I've never been able to pin you down on this one, so I'm going to have another go. St Pancras Station waiting room. You've just come out of London School of Meditation, and you put your, being a good student, you immediately put what you've learnt into practice, and in a grotty, as I understand it, St Pancras waiting room, you say it all opened up. What on earth are you talking about?
I couldn't put it better now. it all opens up. All these childish games of imagination and space exploration, or all this is just spiritual peanuts there. The great opening up, way beyond. Oh dear.
John, I've never used this expression with you before, but was this an awakening experience for you?
Well, that's not a bad word. Awakening. Yes. Interesting, just coming back to the Bible again. The church has what's called an ecclesiastical year, when all the festivals and things are on the calendar. And the very first reading from the Bible for the first day of the ecclesiastical, the church year, is, "Now is the time to awake from sleep." See, it's a good one, because it's a pretty accurate analogy, awaking from sleep, because just, everybody has this experience of dreams. Dreams can be lovely, or they can be awful, the most awful nightmare. And yet this extraordinary experience that we have very often in our lives, you wake up and by breakfast time you can't even remember what it was. How can it be so real and then you can't even remember? Isn't it extraordinary? And doesn't this happen, if that's on a mini scale? I mean, how much of your life, you've had a good bit of life tucked in under your belt. How much of it can you remember?
Just driving in from the tiny house this morning, I had exactly the same thought, very brief recollection of, remember I used to make tin amps, little speakers in tobacco tins, and it just, I did that for 5 years or more, and I just thought in the car, oh, gone, where's that gone? Poof. I was neither nostalgic nor regretful, but just gone, like everything else.
This is extraordinary. And all history, all these wars and movements of rise and fall of civilization, where are they? Isn't it? There's another lovely old hymn. I might have this at my funeral.
Through all the changing
scenes of life, in sorrow and in joy, the praises of my God and King shall heart and mind employ. Something like that.
I've made a note of that, John. But we're also going to have Roy Rogers singing Don't Fence Me In.
It'll be rather a long service. We get put them all in, won't it?